Now, welcome to another WyreStorm Forecasting AV. Today, I'm your host, Paul Graça. I am WyreStorm's Business Development Manager for International Education. I've been now with WyreStorm for about a year, and I have 29 years experience working for another manufacturer where I started back in 95, started for the EMEA market, and worked with the corporate sector, worked with consultants, system integrators, and in the last 16 years focused primarily on the higher education within these markets. Today, I have a very special guest with us, a industry figure with many, many years experience from working with simulation displays, front and rear projection, a member of the Infocom Asia, AVIXA committee chairman, and now director and consultant for Visual Display and his own consulting firm, the one and only Greg Jeffries. Hello,
Hi, thanks for that. You just make me sound really old then, but
Greg.
I'll take that, whatever.
No, very mature.
Mature. Okay.
Welcome. Um, what I'm going to be doing in this podcast, we're not going to talk about Wirefront products. What I want to talk about, and that's something we talked about in the past,
Uh-huh.
is the mastering the art of AV space design. We all know that people look at the projectors, they look at the sources, but they never consider the room, the actual physical four walls, the lighting, the acoustics. And that's why I like to talk with you because that's where you have a lot of experience in. And we'll talk about hybrid solutions and we'll talk about the products being used in those markets, especially when people are using certain products where they have echo cancellation, but they find out that in a school environment, it doesn't work the way they want because the people in the back of the room cannot be heard because it's being canceled out because of the echo cancellation. So tell me, Greg, what are you seeing with your experience in a hybrid solution, for example?
Oh, that's a big question, Paul. But I think to kind of pick out the main theme or threads from what you're saying is that I think that what I see overall is that there is a kind of a confusion or not enough separation between the technology that goes into the room and the room itself. And there's a principle there because um, it if you have a really bad room, the technology can't make up for it. And I think that audio is a particular example, which we might talk about it in more detail. Um,
Yeah,
because if you do have a really appalling acoustic, to rely too much on DSP is not the right way to go. So my thing and my practice in my consulting practice is to help people with the configuration of the space itself. And that might be that you have an existing space that you need to improve at, and look to ways to improve, and then you also people looking to come up with plans to create new spaces, and those are meeting and teaching spaces.
absolutely. Um, yeah, we can, if you like, we can talk about the acoustics because and the audio. Everyone talks about video, and because they look at the display, they look at the sources going to it, but they keep forgetting that the audio plays such a big impact in the solution.
So, well, I mean, despite the fact that my main thing is the visuals, the displays and the lighting and everything that we see, I think the plain fact is that the audio is the most important thing in a hybrid meeting. Um, if the audio dies, you and I can wave at each other, but the communication is dead. But if the video dies and the audio is going, we can carry on. Once
Correct.
once upon a time, we were sat around that Polycom starfish thing in the middle of the table, and we just used to have audio calls, and they worked pretty well. And then we added the video into it. Um, so I think having a big focus on the audio, having a big focus on the acoustic is actually it's one of those things at the very top of the tree. What I we'll talk about it in more details, but the way that we work in order to take a holistic approach to workspace design is to break everything down into component pieces. um, but the audio and the acoustics is really absolutely vital. One thing that we are seeing, I think, is an over reliance on the signal processing. And the laws of physics are called laws of physics for for laws. They're not the guidance of physics, they're the laws of physics.
Yeah.
And the fact remains that basically a well-placed microphone, 20-30 centimeters in front of your mouth is the best position. Now, we accept that there are compromises to be made, but if you have a microphone up on the ceiling, we can use fancy words like beamforming, and they do incredible things. That
Mhm.
basically what the DSP is doing is backfilling from what they don't have, as if they had a really good source, based on, say, a gooseneck mic in front of the face. And that then is made worse if there are poor acoustics in the room. Um, DSP is a great thing, and it's a lovely thing, and it does improve it. And and that's introduced at various parts of the chain, through codecs and through the equipment and so on. But I think we've all seen examples where, I think you said it yourself, where, for example, if someone starts clapping, during a call, that's amazing, that gets filtered out. But sometimes there are important things that want to be heard, and they get filtered out too. So I think it's very much a back to basics thing. It's just so important to get to try and have optimal mic positioning and also optimal acoustics as well.
Yeah, I agree with you that on that because the problem you're seeing today is that people are using technologies that are on their PC, what they pick up at the local electronics store,
Yeah,
but it doesn't fix the purpose. It gives them a solution which they're like 95% of the installations
yeah,
are being used in an environment like we are doing today. Just
yeah,
me on my laptop, be able to talk, have some echo cancellation, but when you take that same technology and and put that into a school environment, you're now using, like you said, the DSP to compensate for it, but it's not really designed for that because the room itself wasn't designed properly to enhance the audio the way it should be enhanced.
yeah,
So they're
yeah,
using other peripherals to try to compensate for it. And it also comes down to budget. It comes down to the amount of money they could spend within a room.
yeah,
And once you get like yourself in there and you talk about the acoustics, people realize, oh, that's going to cost me a lot of money. Yeah, but if I use this technology, I could do it. You can, but it's never going to be the way it. And it's real. I think you have to show that sometimes, an environment where it's done properly, so they can really understand how imperative it is to have a good solution.
yeah. I think, again, sort of looking at this from a higher level, the looking at this from a higher level, I think there's a top-down thing here. Um, the what we're talking about here is technology enhanced spaces, and
Mhm.
um, and and so there's a kind of a tradition where the architect or you'll basically get given a room, and then the AV integrator will then be asked to come in there, put the equipment in, and out you go again. Whereas, now with the reality of hybrid working, that actually doesn't it doesn't make for a good result, and B, it costs more than it needs to, because very often people are spending money on technology to correct problems with the room, whereas if the room were right to start with, you'd be in really good form. And so, the objective is to get is to have the room so that the technology really sings and does it and plays to its best advantage, and not to have the technology there to correct problems in the space. And that could be anything from design through acoustics through lighting, the whole thing. And this is not about spending more money. If you do things in a thoughtful way, and you look at the workspace as an integrated project, very often you can save money, because you can aim to get it right first time. You can expect to spend the budget where you need to spend it, and also if you get it right, the cost of running it will be lower too, because there's an environmental consideration to all of these things as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do know that we talked about the audio portion of it, and I know visual has evolved so much the last 10, 15 years. But there's a lot of things that happen. Even the lighting. I've been to a couple universities where the presenter is in the front. You got your screen against the wall, and in front of the presenter is light coming straight down, which is bleeding into the screen, which actually then affects the
Yeah,
contrast of the. So that's like in the past is what you want to have because
yeah,
but in today's environment you don't want that because you can't see what's on that screen.
yeah. So, you raise a really good point there, and there's actually a structural reason for that. Um, the organisations tend to be very heavily siloed, and siloed in a traditional way.
Hmm.
So, usually the lighting will be the responsibility of the facilities or the building management department, and um, and because and that's a separate thing to the AV and the IT teams that are there. So you get this paradox where very often an organization, and particularly universities, but they're not the only culprits,
Hmm.
where people have spent a lot of money on light fittings that are actually killing the quality of the display, and spending X thousand dollars over X years on wasting electricity on something that's, you've got this kind of negative feedback loop. And so there's a coordination issue here. And so this comes back to the point I was making about, when if you accept that what we're talking about is technologically enhanced spaces, then you have to have this joined up, this holistic approach to it. It can't be the case that you have, a room that's just handed on to AV professionals to do their thing, and then go away from. If people want to have spaces that are A, successful to start with, and B, are as reasonably future proofed or prepared for the future as much as possible, this approach is 100% essential.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the environments that I've seen is it comes down to price, and and I think maybe with the newer builds happening, that there might be more room and more understanding of needing to look at the environment and make sure that when we do put the visual enhancements in there, that you're getting the best out of the rooms. But most what I see currently is it's just a refurbishment where they just want to fix up that room and use what it is, and then you find out that, and but I'm also finding out a lot of universities since the pandemic are now looking at different solutions that are more cost effective and giving them more than what they were originally getting from using other products in the market.
So tell me a little bit more about that, Paul.
Well, what I've seen is that, for example, there's one product that they're using for a dual screen environment, um, and it works really well. Very expensive, but then they found out now that if they have a desktop PC with multiple outputs going to cheaper screens, they can have the same flexibility for a third of the price.
Yeah, yeah,
And now you're finding out university going, oh, I just spent £5,000
yeah,
on this solution,
yeah,
which I could have done for
yeah,
£1,000.
yeah. I think you speak to a really important point there because effectively, I think there's a kind of a a collusion of we're all technology nerds, and I
Yeah,
think that there's a kind of a default where whatever the question is, whatever the problem is, we like to think that the answer is, well, what equipment are we going to buy? Which brand is it going to be, which model is it going to be, um, and in all of these years I've been working in standards, the really important standards, or the ones that have been the most effective as far as as far as I'm concerned, are performance standards. So what the point here is that what you do is that you want to describe what a good outcome is in measurable and repeatable metrics, and then reverse engineer from that point, because in the end, as far as the user experience is concerned, um, it's absolutely, it doesn't matter what the brand or the vendor is going to be. The question is, can it deliver it? um, and I think that again, thinking about this tendency to think in terms of technology is when users go out and procure whatever they need for a room, or rooms or spaces, or whatever it is, they tend to think about the technology. So they tend to think in terms of shopping list of equipment rather than the outcomes that they want. And so um, and I've been involved in so many projects over the years where people, when they so once the thing is in, they go, and then they kind of, and then people start to use it. Then they'll go, okay, well, that's a shame that we didn't do that, and so they'd
yeah,
say to the contractor, well, why didn't you do that? And usually the answer is, because you didn't ask me. um,
right.
and so to be so I think that there's a change management piece here about changing the attitude, or the ways of procuring. um, and I think that speaks to basically enabling people as far as possible, because I think particularly in higher education, there in reality, with the framework agreements, you've got a relatively small number of large companies who execute these projects, and these people have got most fantastic experience, and a lot of talented people. And I think that if you think in terms of procuring projects, by defining the deliverables and the outcomes that are wanted, then that gives more opportunity for the integrator to actually use their talent, use their experience, to be able to engineer and configure the right solution. And it goes and it's a practical thing as well, because it's not just a question of what will work. On campuses, you've got massive estates of equipment, and what's also really important is that not just that you have something that will work on day one, but something that will work on day 10, and year one, year two, and three. And so
Absolutely.
another very important part of that is what the integrator can support, either remotely or on site. So those sorts of things I think are very, very practical.
I agree with you on that. But I can also, but the downside on that side too is that we have all these talented people in the market wanting to give a really good solution, You provide that solution, it goes out to tender, and then it gets revalue engineered because they just didn't have the funds.
Yeah.
Now you're getting a solution that was not really how it was designed, but
Yeah.
now to compensate for the budget, and now they're getting a solution that, well, it's not working the way we want. Yeah, but unfortunately, you're not giving me the funds to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes maybe more important to get it at the end user stage to sit there and talk to them and explain to them, here we are in this room. There's a lot of windows in this room. If you're going to use an IR remote, it may not work because of the light coming in there will reflect your IR. So you need to look at a different solution. You might have to use R32, or you might have to use something else to make sure that the signal gets to your display.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that I know that people want the ideal solution, but do you think that's possible? I mean, I can understand the people that have the funds will do it, but are you seeing a change in the market for wanting to have a more AV environment that's giving the great experience?
Um, so I'd like to say the answer is yes, but it's honestly it's a patchy, it's a mixed picture.
Hmm.
Um, I think that we are we're living in the positive and negative outcomes of the pandemic in with regards to this conversation. I think that the industry did a miraculous, genuinely miraculous thing to transform existing spaces into hybrid spaces very quickly,
Absolutely.
so that people could get up and running and continue working and operating. And I think that was that was that achievement should never be underestimated. But the downside of that is that the bar for what was good enough was set really pretty low. Complete absence of using standards, and and so we have this kind of habit that very often we haven't broken. I remember speaking sort of towards the end of the pandemic, um, to the UK consultants group, run by my friend Owen Ellis, and the bunch of consultants there were going, um, well, we had to put these systems in really, really quickly, but they're really, honestly, we don't think they're good enough. But people have just got so used to that level, that level, and I witnessed some people have got used to, for example, poor audio. Um, what good enough is an interesting question, because when people of my generation, if you've got to listen to music, you'd want to have like a nice hi-fi, and we might have vinyl, we might have
Correct.
CDs. Now, for the younger generations, it's all about the content, and they're happy with these compressed MP3 streams for the audio, and relatively limited video. And so you do have that balance. But I do feel that for fixed spaces where you're trying to create a user experience, the bar has to be set much higher than people are expected than people are used to. I'm working on a couple of projects now, where the clients really have been habituated to really poor audio. And I think that the thing is that it's always it's a seeing is believing thing, or hearing is
Mhm.
believing. I think once people actually see what a good uh, what a good uh, a, what a good display looks like, what good lighting looks like, once people hear what good audio is like, and to raise that level of intelligibility, then people don't want to go back. In some ways it's about breaking the fourth wall. In simulation, we think in terms of cues, but the question is, what is the point what is the point in a given AV experience that that you're supplying, where people can suspend their disbelief, and it's all about the interaction,
Correct.
and that's it. And I think the thing is, if you think in those terms, and if you look at and if you know, very often, you know, you've asked about how I see it with AV. I mean, how
Yeah.
I see it is that usually the AV comes into the project, you know, too late, and there are kind of it's as if there's a whole kind of nest of assumptions that how it's going to be done, and so really, the decision about which vendor, which you know what models and SKUs are going to be bought, you're a long way down the road, and really the best step is just take a breath, start at first principles, and actually look at what's really required. um, because sometimes it might be the case that what you actually need is a flip chart in the corner with a webcam on it, and not some fancy big display, because you just
Yeah.
have to again, you have to think about, well, what's needed in the room. You know, what are the, you know, what I call it, the hierarchy of need, the hierarchy of importance. You know, what is that? You need to establish that. And very often I think you can save money by looking at it that way. I mean, a room is a funny space, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
quite often, you know, you'll have a room and there'll be a budget of like €4 to do the AV equipment, yet they've spent like 10,000 quid on the table. It's you
Yeah.
you know, and the per square meter cost of the carpet is more than the cost of the per square meter they spent on the display. There's a whole, you know, by the room being, you know, broken down and siloed like that, you have this kind of you know, this massive contradictions in any given space typically.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know from my experience from my previous employer that they spent a lot of money in their presentation rooms because they know that they're going to be speaking in front of a large audience. So they put in those acoustic paneling so that, you know, they put in the speakers in the right positions. They put microphones and stuff like that. So when you go in there, it gives the user an experience that it's just, wow, I really enjoy that. And that's sometimes imperative if you're trying to get your point across,
Yeah.
that you don't do that. A good example, we did an installation here for WyreStorm for the F1 experience that's in the UK.
Hmm.
Phenomenal, with the beautiful screens, good audio, and that experience will make people want to come back for more. So you'll see that with the museums. You see that with, so like you said, there are amusement parks. So for them to get the attention of the people, they want to have that environment, and it all comes down to the audio, the video, the lighting, all those factors play
Yeah.
a key element.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and then so like you said, you have like the hierarchy. You know, you have the high end stuff, and you got the medium stuff, and you got the low end stuff. So you have to look at each environment and see what do I really want to achieve in these rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite an interesting point about talking about the size of the rooms, because that's another that's another thing I have a kind of an issue with, because
Yes.
I think the point about the size of a room, it's an attribute, it's not a category. And what I mean by that is that the way that a room should be described is by the actual workflows and the functions that need to take place within that space, and the size is a is a secondary thing, and that's kind of, you know, another example of how thinking in terms of technology it's kind of giving it's a two-dimensional, it, you know, the technology of course is absolutely essential, it's absolutely essential, but it's thinking about it, how it fits into the bigger picture of the space.
And I also think that if you look at, I think the corporate market, the corporate sector has more influence on having that experience that you would see like in the higher education.
Yeah.
So,
Unpack that a bit more, Paul. What do you mean by that?
well, I think if you look in the corporate sector, they have, we're talking about rooms, for example, right? Um, a lot of them like to have the room with multiple peripherals in there. They want the best speakers. They want the best design. displays, but the actual room is not designed for it. So you can see in those environments, like you're saying, that maybe we need to look at that room and see, well, maybe what you want, you could do that with another solution, will be more beneficial than if you went for the high end. One thing I had to get used to when I first came over from the States over here. In the US, it's all about, I want the latest and the greatest. I want the whistles and bells. And when I came over to the UK and Europe, it's not about that. They said, what is the best I can get for my money? You know, I can do the same thing with this product for a third of the price. And then you try to say, yeah, but if you have this one, you have this, this, and this. I say, yeah, but I don't need that. I just want this.
I think that I think that it, of course, money is the budget is important, and there's no doubt that there's a general trend to fit out a higher proportion of rooms at a lower cost per room, and that's just a fact of life. It's the as we say in England, it's the price of fish, and that is how it is. However, I think that if people um, can really understand what's important, then that does have an impact on how the budget is spent. Within a given budget, even if that is fixed, with a headroom, how you deploy that within that, I think there's a lot more. Um, there's a lot more flexibility. There are a lot more opportunities to do something to get positive results than people think. Um, I think another approach to this is that we talk about hybrid rooms and hybrid teaching spaces. Is that is I think it's one thing I always try and help clients to do, in whether it's using design tools or whatever, but it's basically to think of the room, uh, and design it from outside the room. So design it from the point of view of the camera and the microphones that are there. Because organizations are, now that we're not traveling so much, and now that hybrid is so important, and for the good of the planet, we should minimize the carbon that we use by traveling around. If the hybrid spaces, the hybrid workspaces, the meeting spaces, the teaching spaces, these very often are the only opportunity that organizations have to promote their brand and their values, and because that tends not to be thought of in a technology sense, um, it doesn't cost money to get the background to where you are, to where the participants are, right. It doesn't take much to get some branding in the right position. This is all about the thought, but people do need to. It is absolutely vital. It's it's to think about. It's to think literally outside the box, outside the room. How is this room self-presenting? How are we presenting ourselves to the outside world? Are we talking to another important institution? Are we negotiating an important sale? Are we negotiating with another government body? How we present ourselves is of vital importance, and this part is not about the technology. It's very much about the room design. So yeah, budgets are constrained, but there are still really basic principles that tend to get overlooked, because people tend to think, well, that's outside my area of jurisdiction, because the facilities guys do the room finish, or the facilities guys do the lighting and so forth, and it's so important to get those things joined up.
That's a good point. I think that's something that more of us need to look into. And like you said, we are, spending most of our time behind the computer, and you want to be able to present yourself the proper way. And we do have tools that can do that. But like you said, if you have a good camera, a good speaker, and both, and you have it on both ends, you're seeing their range, because we're looking on a little 16 by 9 screen, and that's all you see. So, you want to try to get as much information you can out there so that people can really understand who you are, what you're doing, and how can we um, make it a better and pleasant environment for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think the way that we work it in our consulting business, Greg Jeffries Consulting, is that what we do is that we take this disaggregation approach, which is basically the fancy way of saying that we break the room down into all of its component elements. So the idea is that you'd look at the lighting, you'd look at the room finishes, you'd look at the furniture, look at the furniture configuration, all of these elements, and actually have because a, a, a meeting room, a meeting space, a teaching space, it it's a big, complicated thing, and everything. And the other thing is to understand is how one thing has an impact on another. So in order to have clarity on this, it's really important to break it down into these component elements, and so that you look at the things individually and not kind of mix things up. But the interdependencies are really important as well, because another way of thinking about the rooms are, they're kind of containers of energy, in that you've got audio energy, you've got light as energy, around the room, and it
Mhm.
from a user, from a human experience perspective, it's really worth bearing in mind that our experience of both light and sound is effectively an indirect thing, because you and I look at each other by reflected light. It's actually not a very natural thing to have this computer display that you and I are looking at now, because that is light shining directly into our eyes. But normally, in a space, if you're looking at your notebook, at the other people in the room, at the whiteboard, that's all about reflected light. And it's the same with audio. It's not just the direct sound, it's everything bouncing off the walls, because that gives us as humans the orientation. So it's actually having and it's a subliminal thing. It's not something that we think about, but actually having those sounds bouncing off. Because the other funny thing about audio is that, obviously, relative to the speed of sound, speed of light, audio is pretty slow. The delay between the front of the room and the back of the room, in terms of, if you were 6-8 meters down a table from me, and my voice got to the end of the table, if there was a reinforcement system, where there was a speaker over your head at the end of the table, that would get to you, that the sound from the speaker would come to you, X milliseconds before my direct sound came from you. So if you shut your eyes, you would believe that I was actually above your head. So understanding how the physics of the room works, is it kind of gives an indication about why the acoustics and the finishes, and if there's a lot of glass there, because all of the surfaces in the room, the furniture, the walls, the people, they all reflect both light and sound, and understanding that and putting that into the design is part of the way that you can design rooms that deliver really good experiences.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that, and I also I know from my experience that, even just talking to you, like you said, if the person's closer to you will hear everything, but the one in the back may not hear it because of the distance. The wave travels to get there. So, and not that only, but the furniture does play a big factor, as you say, because if you're in an environment where your cubicles, a good example, that keeps it there, is ideal for you to talk to someone on the phone. But you have also cubicles that don't have these sound barriers, and now you're getting the reflections from another conversation coming into your into your
Yeah.
environment. So it can be sometimes very
Yeah.
uh, confusing, or also lose concentration because you're trying to focus on something,
Yeah.
but yet someone's saying something else. So there's so many things.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I know is really popular are the super labs you're seeing in a lot of universities, where they're using AV. They have all these tables. They have their displays. They're able to show what they're doing on that table, and then feed it to other tables, feed it to the main presentation environment.
Yeah.
Um, that also plays a factor on the lighting and the acoustics and the visual.
Yeah. Well, I think absolutely, and I think the point about teaching spaces is that there are different types of pedagogies. There are bit different types of teaching and learning. People teach in different ways. People learn in different ways, and there are different modes of both. And to have some understanding of that is really important at very first principles, rather than go, okay, well, we're going to have a screen here and we're going to have a microphone here, and kind of lay down the law in that way. You really do need to understand how the space is going to operate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
There is.
Because it really depends on what you're trying to achieve in those environments, like we
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
If it's an environment where you're working on something scientific,
Yeah.
yes, you can have that.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's really specific for you need more focus, then
Yeah.
you need to look at, yeah, a different setup for
Yeah.
that.
One thing that a friend of mine kind of always amuses me with, a friend and a colleague, Adam Banks, who's working with me on the new Avixa standard for user experience design for AV. He used to run the UX at Google back in the day, and he has a business now, UX Labs, for making user experience measurements. Is that he said that, and it's absolutely true. First of all, if you Google up UX designers for AV, there isn't anybody. You'll find Adam, because that's not what he does, but he's kind of involved with it, and he's an expert in his field. But basically, what actually never happens, I'm generalizing here, of course, but what never happens in general is that people don't actually talk to the users. They'll talk to the stakeholders. They'll talk to all kinds of people, and but the actual users in the spaces are not are not talked to. So the principles of human-centered design, user-centric design, are really at the heart of the way that I work. And this new standard that hopefully will get published this year, user experience design for AV, will hopefully be very helpful in that respect.
I think that's, like you said, is what we're trying to do here is to educate the market, let them understand that there's more to a simple room environment. You need to really take in
Yeah,
consideration all these facets in order to achieve
yeah,
the experience you want to give to those
yeah,
individuals
yeah,
in those
yeah.
environments.
Mm.
I totally agree. Uh, Craig, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And what we will make sure that at the end of this podcast, that we'll put down the UX design link so that people can then go there and click on the link. Um, People can find this podcast on our YouTube page as well as on LinkedIn. We will make sure that we will have a link here so that people can just click on it as well. We can put it on your website so
Perfect.
that people can have this podcast. Again, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate everything you've given us here.
Paul,
And
it's an honor that to be asked. I really appreciate it, and I've had a really nice time talking with you. This is a passion for me, so it's always fantastic to have an opportunity to have these discussions with friends and colleagues like you.
thank you, Greg. Well, have a wonderful time, and I'll see you at IEC.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Thank you so much.